Although the UFO phenomenon has been around for a long time, it gained prominence in 1947 when American Kenneth Arnold reported seeing 9 flying saucers on June 27. The term was used to describe all unexplained aerial appearances until 1952, when the U.S. Air Force adopted the term UFO, unidentified flying object. Based on observations made in recent decades, it has been established that UFOs come in various shapes, such as discs, arrows, equilateral triangles, spheres, domes, cylinders, or misshapen black masses, without visible or audible propulsion, and even lights that can rapidly change direction or suddenly stop. In many cases, these flying objects have proven to be vehicles of unknown humanoid beings, usually divided into 2 main categories: small ones, slightly over 1 meter tall, with gray skin and big heads, and tall ones, over 2 meters tall, with white skin, blonde or white hair and blue eyes, similar to Nordic people in Europe. The nature or origin of these beings has not yet been established, but they are still considered extraterrestrial due to the often contradictory information they have transmitted to the people they have come into contact with. Additionally, the intentions or purpose of their presence on Earth have not yet been determined. Out of tens of thousands of testimonies gathered so far, it appears that these alleged extraterrestrials usually make secret appearances under the cover of night and abduct people to perform mysterious experiments, most often of a sexual nature. There have been various theories about their intentions and place of origin, but none has been conventionally accepted. The only hypothesis that the majority of humanity has accepted as truth is the one who shows the mysterious visitors as extraterrestrial and the UFOs as their spaceships. Because the number of UFO sightings has increased significantly, researchers of the phenomenon have classified them into different types. If a UFO is observed within a distance of less than 150 meters, it is called a close encounter of the first kind. If it is at the same distance and leaves traces, it is referred to as a close encounter of the second kind. If there are also occupants of the UFO, it is considered a close encounter of the third kind. And if people are abducted, it represents a close encounter of the fourth kind. Although the UFO phenomenon is considered relatively recent, it has been observed to exist since ancient times and all around the world. For example, in 2346 BC, 10 suns were seen above China, and it is said that the divine archer Tsuyu shot down 9 of them. 9 suns also appeared above Japan in the year 9 BC. In both cases, the countries were affected by civil disorder immediately after these appearances. In 480 BC, several UFOs flew over the Salamina area, where the Greeks destroyed the invading fleet of Xerxes. In the year 50 BC, Cicero noted in Concerning Divination, de Divinatione, that often appeared on the sky 2 suns or 3 moons, strange globes, flames and a shining cloud. Strange noises were heard from the sky and the sun rose at night. In the 1st century, Pliny the Elder wrote in Natural History, Naturalis Historia, about a shield of fire that crossed the sky, throwing sparks, during the consulship of Valerius and Marius. An ancient Korean document reported that in the spring of 316, 30 big stars flew across the sky to the west. In 312, Emperor Constantine and his army saw a cross of light in the sky during the march to Rome. According to Nihongi, in 637 a big star floated from east to west, making a thunderlike noise. On August 11, 671, an object covered in flames was seen flying towards the north in several places in Japan, a year before the Jinshin War. On the 11th day of the 8th month of the year 682, an object shaped as a Buddhist baptism flag and colored as a flame floated in the emptiness towards the north, being seen in all provinces. On the 21st day of the 11th month of the year 684, at dusk, 7 stars moved together towards the northeast, falling down after a while. 2 days later, at sunset, a big star fell in the eastern region. Between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m., constellations appeared in disorder and stars fell like rain. A little later, a star rushed up towards the zenith and went on with the Pleiades until the end of the month, when it disappeared. In 9th century Europe, chronicler Gabalus noted landings of ships in 742 and 814. In the description of the siege of Sigeberg Castle in 776, the Annals Loricenses, from the 12th century, report the appearance of flying objects that made the attackers flee. The 16th century Chinese text Journey to the West contains a strange passage. As the traveler rises higher and higher, the sky becomes darker and darker, as if night has fallen. As far as we know, the first person to see the sky dark was Yuri Gagarin in 1961. The English chronicler Tilbury noted that on a Sunday in 1270, in the English town of Bristol, a large ship floated in the air 30 meters above the church. At one point, The ship's anchor caught on the belfry and a little man came out and released the ship. After the locals started throwing stones at him, the little man entered the ship and flew away. The history of the state of the Church of Durham, Historia de Statu Ecclesiae Dunomensis, records that a bright UFO was seen in 1320 in England at the death of the Abbot of Durham. On October 11, 1492, on the Santa Maria ship in the Bermuda Triangle, Christopher Columbus observed a light coming out of the water. Fernando Magellan and other explorers saw similar lights. On April 14, 1561 in Nuremberg, Germany, and on August 7, 1566 in Basel, Switzerland, large spheres and disks, colored in red, blue and black, fought in the sky. Some of these objects fell to the ground and burned without leaving any trace. In the Chronicle of the Country of Moldova written by Ion Nichols, the event of November 8, 1517, and in the Annals of Brasov, events of August 26, 1536, 14th, and January 19, 1549, April 12, 1600, March 29, 1604, November 16 and December 9, 1613, August 9, 1687, and September 5, 1694, there are reports of red disks, balls of fire, suns and stars that moved silently in the sky day and night, white and red lights that moved with thundering sound in complicated air movements, and golden disks similar to the moon appearing during the day. The Annals of Brasov also note that on February 15, 1730, between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m., a shining object moved across the sky, alternating its color between white and red. On October 15, 1595, during Michael the Brave's attack on the city of Targovist, back then under Ottoman occupation, a strange comet appeared in the sky and remained stationary above the Wallachian camp for an hour or two before disappearing without a trace. The Italian and German chronicles also recorded this information. It should be noted that the appearances of comets was strictly observed and recorded by European astronomers of that time. Yet no comet appears to have naturally passed over the sky of Wallachia in 1595. The Journal of John Winthrop, the second governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, published in 1790 under the name History of New England 1630 to 1649, contains numerous sightings of UFOs in Muddy River, Boston. Abraham Ortelius' book Theatre of the Orb of the World, Theatrum Orbis Terrarum, from 1570 contains a description and drawing of such an object. In 1668, 1783, and 1787, French, English, and German astronomers observed strange luminous spots that moved above the dark part of the lunar disk. The first report of a UFO seen through a telescope comes from Con Mather, a colonial Puritan pastor, who in 1714 observed a strange object near the moon. In 1731, over the town of Kilkenny in Ireland, a bright object was observed emerging from a red cloud. The same object was seen throughout Europe over the course of a week. An old Romanian manuscript from Bonat noted the appearance of a large glowing object on December 6, 1737, which hovered in the sky between 6 and 8 p.m., separating and then rejoining. Another Romanian document mentions that on November 27, 1793, the moon appeared to fly across the sky at high speed for several hours during the day. In 1794, the Royal Society of London received a scientific communication from astronomer Wilkins about the appearance of a luminous object on the surface of the moon. On August 10, 1809, British astronomer J. Staveley wrote that he saw a bright aerial object that quickly moved on an irregular trajectory among clouds. In 1812, Sten Iremi from Cecil, Brasov, in modern-day Romania, reported that he observed a large star with many rays that initially moved east and then returned to Western Europe. The brightness of the aerial object had a variable intensity and its movements could be observed for 4 months throughout Europe. French and Russian officers, German, English or Dutch astronomers, Italian and French scholars recorded the event and Lev Tolstoy immortalized it in War and Peace. In 1820, Francis Arago mentioned that during a lunar eclipse, observers in Embrun, France, saw a series of bright objects moving in formation with a straight trajectory. The January 22, 1853 issue of the Hadelap newspaper reported that on January 6, 1853, a ball of fire which appeared above Vienna for 4 times made its final disappearance in a thunderous sound. The December 28, 1853 issue reported that on December 20, 1853, a cone-shaped cloud moved across the sky above Sibiu, moving around its axis with a noisy locomotive sound, whose intensity alternated at regular time intervals. After a few minutes, the cloud disappeared through a small lightning. In July 1868, a bright and very noisy aerial object was observed in Copiago, Chile, shaped as a huge metallic condor with fiery eyes. On March 22, 1870, the crew of the Lady of the Lake ship observed a gray disk flying in the sky, leaving behind a luminous tail. In 1874, Professor Schafarik from the Prague Astronomical Observatory noted that a bright, shining disk crossed the moon's surface and remained visible for a long time. At one point, the light suddenly disappeared. On May 15, 1879, starting at 9:40 p.m. in the Persian Gulf, the Eagle ship was pursued for almost an hour by a strange luminous aerial object made of two wheels of 40-meter diameter each, with a 160 to 170-meter long cylinder between them. A few days later, the object was observed by the crew of the Putness ship in the same area. In 1896, UFO sightings were widely reported in the western United States. UFOs and their occupants can be found not only in Chronicles, but also in religious texts. The Bible describes beings descended from heaven and flying objects which they traveled with. Descriptions of such objects can be found in the books of Moses, Ezekiel, Isaiah, and Matthew. In the early 1970s, NASA researcher Joseph Blumrich concluded that what Ezekiel described was a spaceship. German structural engineer Hans Herbert Bayer created a sketch of the building that Ezekiel built for the Chariot of the Lord, demonstrating that the shuttle fit perfectly into the temple. In 2 Corinthians 12 verses 2-4, Apostle Paul speaks of a man who was brought up to the third heaven. In the Bible, Enoch was taken to heaven, and this event is described in detail in the Book of Enoch, one of the Dead Sea Scrolls. The last biblical book, the Book of Revelation, tells that John was also taken from earth to a place where there were many angels and the Messiah. In the Slavonic apocryphal text called the Vision of Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah was taken to heaven by an angel and received secret teachings. Although it seemed to him that he was away for only 2 hours, when he returned to earth, the angel told him that 32 years had passed. UFOs are also present in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Genesis says that a people came from heaven and other people were taken from the earth and brought to heaven. The people who came from heaven remained on earth for a long time. In the Apocalypse of Moses, Adam and Eve saw a bright ship in the sky, pulled by 4 vultures, with smoke coming out of its wheels. In an apocryphal text attributed to Abraham, he saw a chariot with wheels of fire covered with eyes, and on the wheels there was a throne wrapped in flowing flames. The Tibetan books Tanjua and Kanjua describe ancient flying devices called heavenly pearls, made of iron alloys and a hard, black metal, which American researchers identify as titanium. The Hindu book Samsupta describes in detail the flying machines of the gods, from which fire came out, and the vehicles they used on the ground. Samaringana Sutradhara speaks of large airships, whose stern scattered fire and mercury during movement. The ionic engines designed today also rely on the use of plasma propulsion obtained from mercury vapors. In the 5,000-year-old epic Ramayana, we find vimanas that flew at great heights, producing a strong air current, propelled by mercury. They could rise or fall suddenly, fly at great speeds and stop almost instantly in the air, but produced an extremely loud noise during takeoff and landing. In the Mahabharata, Prince Arjuna met the god Indra and his wife, Sachi, driving a heavenly battle chariot crowned with rays, a vehicle that takes off after Arjuna boards. Indra took Yudhishthira to heaven in the chariot, then brought him back to earth to teach people the law of wisdom. All cultures, since ancient times, speak in their myths about beings that created and civilized humans, transmitted knowledge to them and watched them over time. These entities, like extraterrestrials today, have the ability to fly, often assisted by vehicles, have terrible weapons, live in the sky or underground, abduct people, mate with them, or pass on teachings. While most of them were called gods, at some times and places they had different names, being called angels, demons, spirits, fairies, elves, fauns, or satyrs. Here are some examples. In the year 66, Roman commander Cestius withdrew his troops from Jerusalem, apparently for no reason, the Romans returning to besiege the city only after 4 years. An explanation for this mysterious retreat can be found in the War of the Jews by historian Flavius Josephus. A few days after the holiday, on the 21st day of the month of Artemisius, an incredible and amazing phenomenon occurred. Before sunset, the crowd could see chariots and armies of armed soldiers emerged unexpectedly in the air. A similar army appears in the second book of Kings in the Old Testament. When the Syrian army besieged the city of Dothan to catch Elisha, the prophet showed a servant that there was no reason to be afraid, and the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and, behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire round about Elisha. 6:17. In Nihongi it is written that in 200 AD, in the village of Notarita, there was a man named Hashiro Kumawashi, White Eagle Feather, who had wings on his body. He had the ability to fly and therefore did not obey imperial orders, often robbing the people. In 460 AD, Emperor Hohatsuswakataka went hunting on the mountain of Katsuraki, where he met a tall man who looked and acted like the emperor and introduced himself as the god Hitokotomush, a master of words. The two hunted together, and in the evening the god accompanied the emperor to where the Kyum River ended. And on the first day of the 8th month of 661 AD, a demon with a big head appeared on the top of Mount Asakura, looking down at the funeral ceremonies of the empress. The great Sanskrit grammarian Panini wrote in 400 BC that initiates are often taken on trips by extraterrestrials to Mercury and Venus. In 840, Archbishop Agabard described how witches from the sky were killed with stones in the French city of Lyon. In The Frenzy of Orlando Furioso, from 1510, the Renaissance poet Ludovico Ariosto wrote about impressive demons who crossed the sky in large glass ships. Paracelsus and Montfaucon de Villers, in Le Conte de Gabalus, wrote in the 17th century, in the most serious manner, about sylphs, gnomes, and nymphs appearing before people, reviving the ancient Babylonian incantations. In the 1691 manuscript The Secret Commonwealth of Elves, Fauns, and Fairies, Reverend Robert Kirk of Aberfoyle, Scotland, described a secret organization of elves who often travel through the air and live inside the earth in large, bright homes illuminated by eternal lamps and fires that do not need fuel. They appear and disappear at will but can also be invoked through spells. They do not seem to be devoted to God or have any religion, and their philosophy is that nobody and nothing dies, according to the Reverend. Researcher Walter Evans Wentz wrote in 1909 that in the mountains of Great Britain there live leprechauns, called gentry by the Irish and good people by the Scots. They kidnap young and intelligent people, can paralyze anyone with a glance, live in underground castles where they remain forever young. Their food does not contain salt, and anyone who tastes their food can never return home. In his PhD thesis at Indiana State University, folklorist Thomas Eddy Bullard noted that in many traditions, fairies kidnap people and take them to underground kingdoms where time passes differently from Earth. According to the surveys of Nicolae Densuzianu, the fairies from the Romanian folklore kidnap people and dance at night, come from above with musicians, have lit candles, and dance in trees. Where they pass, the grass no longer grows, a horseshoe shape of red grass remains, or the grass turns black in a circular shape. Astronomer Jacques Vallée quotes a large number of writings about the insatiable erotic desires of fairies and leprechauns towards people, and about the belief that fairies or other fantastic creatures stalk small children to kidnap them. This detail is also abundant in the folklore of the Native Americans. Medieval theologians considered incubi, males, and succubi, females, to be demons originating from fallen angels, who often mated with humans. St. Augustine had credible testimonies that Saonians or fauns, usually called incubi, often tormented women, asking and obtaining sexual favors from them. Late medieval writings are rich in accounts of these creatures' sexual attacks. In a 15th century French calendar, demons are shown penetrating the bellies of their victims with needles. From the writings of the medieval theologian Sinistrari it appears that, in his time, clergy were as puzzled by the multitude of reports about incubi and succubi as today's UFO researchers. He was intrigued that these demons did not obey exorcists and were not afraid of holy objects, concluding that incubi and succubi did not fall into the same category as the devils that possess some people. Martin Luther was firmly convinced that the demons performed sexual experiments on humans, and St. Thomas Aquinas wrote in his Summa Theologica from 1273, "If children are born from the union with demons, this is not from their seed or from the bodies they have assumed, but from seed taken from certain men for this purpose, since the same demon who acts as a succubus for a man becomes an incubus for a woman." Although many medieval authors expressed similar opinions, Ulrich Molitor, a doctor of law at the court of Constance, expressed his doubts in 1489. "It does not seem possible to me that the devil, acting as a female demon with a man, can collect semen and then transmit it, as a male demon, to a woman, and thus produce an offspring." In Superterrestrial Contacts 2, The Cosmic Illusion, Contacts Superterrestres 2, L'Illusion Cosmique, the French author Jean Sider stated about demons, "The demons were the old pagan gods, and they were transformed into demonic creatures by the heads of the church for its needs and to strengthen its domination over all layers of the population." In the same book he added, "Even the forest divinities of the first millennium were declared diabolical. Diana became Hecate, then the queen of the Sabbath, then simply the devil. In Islamic tradition there are mentioned jinns, or genies, invisible beings that can materialize and dematerialize at will. Jinns can change their shape or size, often abduct people and carry them away at great distances. They can also have children with human women. In Japan, Tengu are minor flying deities, descendants of the rebel god Susanoo, who often practice divine abductions. They live in colonies in the mountains. In one legend, a man named Takegoro used to watch the small Tengu playing near a pine tree close to Lake Shinji. One evening he disappeared and suddenly appeared 3 days later with torn clothes, pale-faced, with a strange gleam in his eyes and a staff in his hand, which he never let go of. Every morning the men would run out of the house. His voice could be heard from the top of the pine tree, where he spoke to an old Tengu. Then he was seen flying in the sky. The Tengu forced him to fly with them daily and threatened him with death if he did not comply. After about 20 years he was left alone. He found a lot of money and the old Tengu visited him from time to time. North American natives are familiar with the UFO phenomenon. Shortly after publishing his volume Abduction, 1994, Professor John Mack was contacted by healers and leaders of the Native Americans, who told him that North American indigenous populations consider the so-called UFO abductions a part of the world order. This is not known to researchers of the phenomenon or academic circles because the subject is sacred and cannot be discussed with anyone, and also because the opinions of the native minority about beings from other realms are not taken seriously, being labeled as folklore. Wallace Black Elk, the healer of the Lakota tribe, said, "White scholars call this UFO because they have lost contact with wisdom, knowledge, power, and grace. They have lost contact with the star people." The shaman Bernardo Peixoto from the Brazilian town of Para tells that in 1994, in the jungle, he met 3 humanoid creatures with gray skin, triangular heads, big eyes, and very long hands, wearing sweets covered in an aura of pure light. They claimed to have been sent by the Great Spirit as messengers because we could not face that huge energy. The elders of the village explained to Bernardo that he had met the Ikuyas, who have been taking care of people for millennia. They do not show themselves to just anyone. They come in the form of little men, luminous globes, or animals, and sometimes they mate with women, fathering hybrid children. All of these beings, known as fairies, spirits, demons, or jinns, seem to perfectly describe today's extraterrestrials or the gods of the past. There are other connections between extraterrestrials and folklore, religion, or mythology, which are obvious from the accounts of those who claim to have experienced close encounters of third or fourth kind. For example, George Adamski claimed that in 1952 he met an entity called Ashta Sharon, the commander of an army of 10 to 20 million beings who had a huge universal peace fleet of extraterrestrial ships from the Free Federation of Planets. In 1951, George Van Tassel contacted through channeling the same Ashta, allegedly the commander of a space station controlled by the Seven Lights Council of the planet Shanxia. Ashta was also the one who, on November 26, 1972, interrupted TV broadcasts in southern England to send a message to Earthlings. Ashta has the same name as the morning star deity in West Semitic mythology. To pre-Christian Ethiopians, he was the god of the sky. The name seems to have been borrowed through the Arab route from the Akkadian goddess Ishtar. George Adamski also claimed to have met another extraterrestrial, named Furkan. As Whitley Strieber noted in his transformation book, Furkan was the name of a king who ruled in Wales in the 7th century. The name is composed of the Welsh words fur, man, and kan, head. One night in July 1952, in the Mojave Desert area of California, maintenance mechanic Truman Bethurum was invited onto a ship by 8 or 10 1-meter-tall beings. There he met the expedition leader, a gorgeous woman named Ora Raines. According to Whitley Strieber, who noticed connections between the stories of contacts and Welsh folklore, Erak Rien roughly means heavenly body of air in Welsh. Swiss farmer Edouard Meyer claimed that on January 28, 1975, he met extraterrestrials from the Pleiades star cluster. One of them, a stunning blonde, despite being 400 years old, was named Semjace. Her name is similar to that of the leader of the Watchers in the Book of Enoch, Samayaza or Samjaza. On the night of December 13, 1973, journalist and race pilot Claude Vorelhan, who later changed his name to Rael and founded the Raelian sect, was invited onto a ship by a little man. There he met beings with superior intellect, called Elohim, who invited him to be their ambassador among Earthlings. Elohim is one of the names of the biblical God, as well as the name of the Ugaritic divinities. On August 2, 1952, aviation mechanic Orfeo Ongalucci heard a voice belonging to the space brother Neptune, who informed him that Earth was threatened by a disaster called the Great Accident. In January 1953, Angalucci was spiritually transported to another planet where he met a beautiful extraterrestrial named Lyra and her friend Orion. Neptune was the Roman god of the seas, known as Poseidon to the Greeks. Orion bears the name of a hunter from Greek mythology who was accidentally killed by the goddess Artemis and then raised to the celestial sky along with his faithful dog, Sirius. Orion gave his name to a constellation, probably the most important one in ancient religions. London taxi driver George King was mentally informed in May 1954 that he would become the spokesman for an interplanetary parliament. The message came from the Cosmic Brotherhood of Space Masters. One of these cosmic brothers was Master Aetherius, an elderly Venusian who lived for 3,000 years. He bears the name of Ether, the Greek god of space or upper air. On October 2, 1984, at 11:45 p.m., Karen L. from Norway saw three human-like entities, over 1.80 meters tall, dressed in silver jumpsuits, entering a room. Several automatic dictation contacts and astral travels followed. One of the entities she met on these travels was named Zadar. This name closely resembles Zadok, or Zadok, the first high priest of the Temple of Solomon, according to Jewish mythology. Lab 9, the group led by Andrea Puharich and James J. Hertak, was in constant communication with 9 entities starting from 1952, as reported by Lynn Picknett and Clive Prince in the Stargate Conspiracy. These entities claim to be the 9 principles and the 9 forces of the universe, as well as God, the Elohim of the Hebrews, the Eons of the Gnostics, and the great Ennead of Heliopolis. Puharich was told that they were the reincarnation of the Egyptian god Horus. The same was stated in trance by Rose, the wife of occultist Aleister Crowley. In September 1974, one of these entities, who introduced himself as Tom, claimed to be Adam, Harmarchus, and Harinker of the Egyptians, the latter two being alternative names for Horus. Another entity presented itself as Ra, the sun god of the ancient Egyptians. According to the 9 entities of the Lab 9 group, Jesus is the last of us to visit the planet Earth. In the book The Secrets of the Saucers, 1955, aviation mechanic Orfeo Angalucci wrote that the Space Brothers confessed to him that Jesus was one of them. Frank Strange claimed that he met a Venusian named Val Thorne in the Pentagon building who claimed to be a kind of interplanetary missionary in the service of the Lord, suggesting that he might be Jesus himself. Taxicab driver George King was mentally notified in 1954 that high spiritual leaders of humanity such as Krishna, Buddha, or Jesus continue to live on other planets and visit us from time to time to try to ensure the survival of the human species. In 1965, 2 Soviet astronauts on an orbital station saw a UFO wreckage approximately 70 kilometers from Earth, with a diameter of about 31 meters and a length of approximately 186 meters. Physicist Sergei Georgevich said that the ship bore a sign resembling Quetzalcoatl, the god of trade, arts, crafts, knowledge, and fertility for the Aztecs. On December 26, 1980, a UFO landed in Rendlesham Forest in Suffolk County, England, 128 kilometers northeast of London. Military personnel were sent there, including Sergeant James Peniston and Airman John Burroughs. They found a black triangular ship, 2 meters tall and 2.75 meters wide, with blue and orange lights and a yellow light passing between them. A orange fog surrounded the ship. Different symbols, similar to Egyptian hieroglyphs, were drawn on the ship. When he touched the ship, Peniston had a vision, lots of ones and zeros, a kind of binary code. He noted what he saw, and only in October 2010 he introduced the code into a computer. The message that came out was the exploration of humanity continues for planetary evolution, and the coordinates 53 degrees 9 feet 42.532 inches N/13 degrees 13 feet 12.69 inches W, which indicate a mysterious sunken island known in Celtic legends as High Brazil. Called the Other Atlantis, it is said to have been the home of a very advanced civilization that used acoustic technology and vibrational healing. All of this data indicates that behind the names of extraterrestrials, gods, angels, demons, spirits, fairies, ghosts, elves, and so on are the same entities. Furthermore, it seems that they have not been on our planet for a few decades, but for at least a few thousand years. If this hypothesis is true, we should find their fingerprints not only in texts, but also have concrete evidence of their presence. Evidence that exists in abundance, being considered anomalies by conservative scientists. These anomalies, in front of which science shrugs helplessly, can only be attributed to superior beings who have visited our planet from the earliest times to today, or at least to their technology. Here are some of the traces of the gods, although the dating methods or accuracy of information remain debatable. The UFO Nachrichten magazine reported in issue 263 of 1980 about the discovery of a 250-million-year-old weapon in a mine in the U.S. The experts who were given the strange object to study could not find out how it works. Their conclusion is that there is evidence in support of the statement that the weapon is not of terrestrial origin. Soviet paleontologist Alexander Petrovich Kuznetsov uncovered in Yakutia a 40,000-years-old musk ox skull with a 9mm bullet hole between the arches. The skull is currently in the Paleontology Museum in Moscow. In 1969, in the Ural Mountains, an iron cylinder with smooth and regular surfaces was found in a coal seam that is millions of years old. In 1973, near the Romanian city of Iași, an aluminum object, several 100,000 years old, made by obvious industrial procedures, was found next to the bones of a mastodon. As far as we know, aluminum was first produced in 1883 and mastodons existed before the appearance of man, up to 800,000 years ago. Several human footprints have been found next to those of dinosaurs in the same geological layer with an age of 70 to 140 million years. Scientists from the former Soviet Union made public the discovery of human footprints in the same layer as dinosaur footprints. In the Dinosaur Valley National Park of Texas, numerous such footprints also have been found. In 1959, a human skeleton was unearthed from several million years old geological layers in a mine in Italy. In Imhaber and Hagar, Libya, old drawings from 600 years ago from the Neolithic period were found, containing scenes of a ritual dance, similar to a royal court ballet. In the drawings, few white people are shown in privileged positions, while blacks are shown in dependent situations on the whites. For example, in one fresco, a white woman is the main character and few black men are dancing in front of her. In the famous mural painting called The White Lady, dating back 3,000 to 5,000 years ago and found in Brandberg in southwest Africa, in a cave on the so-called Fire Mountain in the Namib Desert, a white, slender woman, taller than her companions, is dressed in a turtleneck sweater and trousers, gloves, garter belts, socks, shoes, and her red hair is wrapped in a diamond mesh. Behind her there is a white man wearing boots and a helmet with a visor. The others, mostly black, are naked, wearing only period-specific ornaments and weapons. The Losec-Poitou, France, drawings show people in modern clothing, such as jackets, hats, shorts. The drawings discovered on the rocky plateau of Tamanrasset in the North Sahara depict human figures wearing uncomfortable and thick costumes with round helmets equipped with two very large circular visors. In 1979, rock drawings were found in the Sulaut Valley in Mongolia dating back 5,500 years and engraved on the walls of a 12 kilometers long gallery. They depict animals flying above the sun and moon, people, snakes and inexplicable anthropomorphic figures, some with 3 fingers on their hands and feet. In 1969, a Neolithic drawing was found in Fergana in Uzbekistan that depicts a person with a sealed spherical helmet equipped with antennas. Behind him there is a strange device, very similar to breathing apparatus used in the outer space. The Russian researcher G. Shotsky discovered 2 similar drawings in 1961. The first, near the village of Ona in Kazakhstan, depicts a humanoid whose head is covered with a diving helmet surrounded by rays. The second, located near the village of Navoi in Uzbekistan, dating back over 5,000 years, depicts people equipped with breathing apparatus. A plate found in El Salvador depicts the flight of a humanoid in a long cigar-shaped vehicle above the palm trees. In 1956, in the Italian Alps, a French archaeologist found a Neolithic drawing depicting a person wearing heavy clothing with a cylindrical breathing device on their back and a round helmet with a visor and antennas. In 1956, at Jebarin in the Tassalai Plateau of Algerian Sahara, the French researcher Henri Lotte found hundreds of walls covered with paintings and engravings depicting thousands of animals and people, including figures with unusual clothing for that era. They hold chains with rectangular boxes attached to them. 2 of them have parabolic antennas attached to the tops of their spherical helmets. Another nearly 20 figures have round helmets. At the center of the plateau, on a solitary rock, is the figure of the great Martian god, standing 6 meters tall. He is wearing a fully sealed suit, similar to a space suit, and a helmet with slits near the nose and mouth. The Ganga statues from the city of Kamakai, attributed to the Gemin culture and dating back about 8,000 years, depict beings in seamless costumes with sealing joints between the helmets and suits with round visors, identical to the great Martian god of Tassalai. In the caves of Norway and Sweden there were found Neolithic paintings depicting humanoids with round, large and uniform heads, without distinctive features, and aerial winged objects with no resemblance to birds. In Val Camonica, Switzerland, archaeologist Emanuel Anati found drawings of people wearing aviation jumpsuits, round helmets with antennas, who were holding triangular objects. In 1913 and from 1969 to 1970, in the Air Massif at Kori Tagwe in Nigeria, many similar rock engravings were found. A depicted humanoid has the same strange jumpsuit with baggy pants and aviator-like boots, a round helmet with antennas and other technical elements arranged on the central part of the suit. On a 4,000-year-old bas-relief from Guatemala, a man with long hair and beard is kneeling before a strange being who stands with hands on his hips. He is wearing a diving suit, tall boots, baggy pants, a shirt with a belt and a round dial on the left side of the chest, mitts, a round helmet with a visor and a hose connected to the tank on his back. In Tiwanaku, Bolivia, several human-shaped or face-shaped stones have been discovered. Some have heads covered with round helmets, with many unidentified accessories, spikes, balls, triangles, circles. In Delamere, Australia, rock engravings have been found, depicting humanoids with helmets, in a sitting position and holding objects similar to modern electronic devices. On Easter Island, on top of the Reno Cow volcano, at the ruins of Orongo, the village of the Birdmen, and on Motunuai, the island of the Birdmen, there are carved into solidified lava faces of people with wings and bird heads, with long beaks full of teeth. The over 15,000 Doga statuettes, dating from 14,000 to 300 BC, discovered in the mountains of the Japanese province of Aomori, represent humanoids wearing suits fully covered in technical details, round helmets equipped with antennas, flashlights, special-mounted visors, and light filters, diffusers and respiratory filters. The Japanese say that these Doga came from the sky and taught humans different things, such as the tea ceremony, the use of wasabi, architecture, language, alphabet and, in general, everything related to their culture. Between 1970 and 1979, many ancient metal objects were discovered in Kazakhstan. Among them there is a small bronze statue, which represents a humanoid with a heavy jumpsuit, forming a common body with the helmet on his head, equipped with boots and gloves. In the San Pietro Desert of Chile there were found long engravings, representing winged humanoid figures, geometric figures, and inscriptions carved in stone, with letters over 2 meters long, similar to the runic alphabet. In Peru, in the valley between the cities of Nazca and Palpa, whose surface measures 120 square kilometers, there are giant drawings and lines, similar to aircraft tracks. In the province of Arequipa, in the Majas and Sihuas deserts, 1,000 kilometers southeast of Lima, there are over 3,000 years old drawings similar to those of Nazca. Among them is a 72-meter-long and 2-meter-wide snake. Nearby are 2 6-millennia-old cities with thick walls of 5 to 6 meters. Another mystery in Peru is the so-called Band of Holes, located in the Pisco Valley. There are thousands of holes, about 2 meters deep, with a distance of 1 meter between them. The band can only be observed from an airplane. In southern England, in the valley between the cities of Oxford and Swindon lies the famous White Horse of Abingdon. The design, which is 110 meters long, was created by cutting a deep layer of grass to reveal the dazzling white surface of the chalk, which actually forms the soil. The horse is stylized with a surprisingly artistic refinement, created in a manner that can be classified as modern. Because there are nearby remains of Celtic settlements from the Iron Age, where coins with similar images have been found, it is assumed that the huge design was made by the Celtic tribes who lived in those places over 2,000 years ago. However, its creation remains unexplained, regardless of its historical period, because the design can only be seen quite well from the tops of the hills located at distances ranging from 800 to 3,000 meters, so if the Celts had supervised the making of it from those locations, they would have needed rangefinders, theodolites, topographic engineers, and means of remote communication to transmit the coordinates to the executors. The design can be seen best from an airplane at an altitude of 800 to 1,000 meters and is so clearly outlined that in World War II it had to be camouflaged not to serve as a landmark for German pilots. In Somerset County in England, a swamp was drained so that the outlines of the channels and dried portions would reproduce part of the sky map. Near Cambridge, on the hills of Gog and Magog, can be seen some strange figures, and at Sonobos stands out a gigantic humanoid silhouette. At Machica in Peru have been found funerary masks, statues, figurines and bas-reliefs belonging to the Moche Inca civilization, dating back to 1500 BC, that show a strange multitude of racial and Semitic types, Arabs, Hebrews, blacks, Mongols, Japanese, Greeks and Scandinavians who, theoretically, only reached Peru after Pizarro's conquistadors. Some statues are carved in stone and others, especially the funerary masks, are made of green jade of unknown origin. Hard stone quarries have been found in the former Sumer at Gar Kobe from 40,000 BC and Baradosjan, 30,000 BC, in Norway, Germany, and France from 15,000 to 10,000 BC, in South America, Egypt, Polynesia, and China from 30,000 to 10,000 BC. At Ezion-Geber was discovered a real metallurgical furnace, fitted with a vast system of chimneys, ventilation ducts, and complex cauldrons with symmetrical openings, from which copper was obtained. This smeltery is over 6 millennia old. In southern Africa, 150,000 years old gold mines were found, and in Peru, 50 millennia old. Besides gold, in Peru, people mined for quartz, hematite, and red ochre. The oldest harpoon, the oldest miner's axe chisel, and the oldest double-groove spear tip, bayonet type, in the world were discovered on the territory of present-day Romania, dated approximately 20,000 years old. In Shanadur, on the former Sumerian territory, there was discovered a 45,000 years old skeleton of a child, which showed clear indications of radiation with lead and cobalt isotopes. In 1972, 3 elongated pockets of depleted uranium ore were found in the Moanda region of Gabon. There, 500 tons of uranium-235 were deposited, which was used in modern atomic reactors located elsewhere. The Knossos citadel in Crete had sanitary facilities 1,600 years before our era. The cities of Pompeii and Rome in Italy were supplied with water through lead pipes. A valve over 1,900 years old, called Caligula's valve, was found on the bottom of Lake Nemi near Rome, with smooth and perfectly executed surfaces. The Mayan, Incan, and Aztec cities had impressive sewerage works, huge reservoirs, and stone ducts. On a wreck of a galley that sank in 78 BC near the Greek island of Antikythera was found a device that showed the solar and lunar cycles in relation to the Earth's movements, as well as the position of all the planets in our solar system. It helped navigators to calculate their position and the direction to follow during the night. This device can be considered a primitive computer. At Tiwanaku in Bolivia, on the wall at the north exit of the valley, the Amazon River map with all its tributaries is accurately reproduced. In 1929, the map of Turkish Admiral Piri Reis was discovered, who lived in the 16th century. The map depicted Antarctica without ice, as it was a few million years ago. Similarly, the map of Orontius Phineas showed Antarctica in detail, hundreds of years before it was discovered. At the end of the 19th century, British archaeologist Sir Flinders Petrie found in Egypt a granite drill with precisely made grooves. The granite could only have been cut with a diamond, and such precious stones were not found in Egypt. In the 1st century AD, the Greek mathematician and engineer Hero built a steam-based engine called an Eolipile. When in 214 BC they were attacked by a Roman fleet, the Greeks from the Sicilian city of Syracuse defended themselves with a weapon made by Archimedes, consisting of huge mirrors. Using the sun's light, the Greeks created a beam that burned the Roman fleet. In January 1981, 28,000 years old rock carvings depicting geometric figures were found in a cave near the Mexican city of Guzman. Many medieval documents written by European chroniclers, such as the Englishman Roger Bacon and the Frenchman Geoffroy de Villehardouin, or Orientals, such as the Byzantines Leonikos Chalcocotylus, Ioannes Kinemus, and Georgios Acropolites, or Arabs Abul Feda and Abul Faragius, described eternal lamps which were given to cities, heroes, or sages in Europe, Asia, and Africa by beings from the sky. These sources of light were made of an unknown material and had a spherical shape. They lit themselves, did not use fuel, did not produce smoke or smell, and gave intense light and heat. If they were touched while they were on, the spheres triggered explosions so powerful that they could destroy entire strongholds or towns. In the secret archives of the Knights Templar, among others in the Baptism of Fire, the secret statute drafted by Magistrate Roncelinus and partially preserved in a parchment from 1240, now at the Vatican, it is written that, in their campaigns in the Middle East and the Mediterranean basin, the Templars encountered cities that possessed very large metal spheres, providing heat and light. In the island of Cyprus, several fortresses and palaces in Famagusta and Nicosia were destroyed by the explosion of such spheres, as recorded in the 14th century by the Chronicles of the Order, the Chancellor of Cyprus, Philippe de Mazios, and the scholar Guillaume de Machaut. When they conquered a city on the Syrian coast in the 12th century, the Templars discovered a globe that lit without a fire. The Grand Master ordered the object to be thrown into the sea because it was undoubtedly a devilish thing. After the globe was thrown, a storm started out of nowhere and all the fish in the area died. Renaissance scholars such as the Englishman William Gilbert and Germans Conrad Puttinger and Johannes Jaeger also mention lamps that burn day and night, found in underground crypts and caves in England and Germany. Unfortunately, those lamps were destroyed either by religious authorities or during wars. In Mato Grosso, Paraguay, the conquistadors found an 8-meter-tall pillar with a big moon on top that lit up the whole city and banished the darkness hundreds of meters around. In the fire that followed the looting of the city, the object disappeared and was not found among the ruins, as recorded by chronicler Barco Centenera. Orellana's soldiers, sent by Pizarro to search for the legendary El Dorado, found on the banks of the Amazon, among numerous indigenous populations, a tribe of white warrior women. The indigents told them that those women came from wealthy, strongly fortified cities lit by small suns that rose at night on the ramparts. Taking into account that a fresco in the temple of the goddess Hathor in Dendera depicts 2 people carrying huge light bulbs and 12 batteries were discovered in Baghdad, Iraq, we can say that our ancestors knew electricity. In Monte Alban, Mexico, the top of a mountain was completely cut and leveled. There is a very old megalithic city there. In 1994, Robert Bauval demonstrated that the pyramids at Giza are arranged in a precise order to mirror the 3 stars of the constellation Orion's belt. And if the pyramids at Giza are built from stone blocks weighing 2 to 3 tons each, the nearby temples are made of blocks weighing 200 to 300 tons each. In Pumapunku, Bolivia, there are large, well-finished granite blocks interlocked like a puzzle. Engineer specialist Christopher Dunn found a deep-cut granite block at Abu Rawash. He believes the only way to make such a cut is to use an 11-meter diameter saw. Near the pyramids at Giza are ditches for these huge saws. In the Bladara Citadel, Romania, Dacian concrete was discovered, which for scientists is a kind of metallic soup made up of titanium, nickel, silver, copper, vanadium, silicon, aluminum, and sodium, and the binder is not calcium, but a silicon compound. In Romania, at Sarmazegetosa Regia Citadel, there are radioactive rocks as well as iron sulfide, vanadium, nickel, and silicon. Many of the stones used in the Dacian buildings don't support microvegetation and moss grows very slowly. However, stones removed from the area have taken root with moss and have been damaged by the elements. Researchers suspect that the Dacians installed clay troughs under the stones to gather infrared and ultraviolet rays, preventing the growth of bacteria. On the northwest coast of France there is Carnac, one of the most important prehistoric sites. Over a 2-mile stretch, there are over 3,000 megalithic stones weighing between 50 and 350 tons, forming geometric shapes. They seem to have been erected between 4500 and 2500 BC. People visiting the site say they feel strong energies there. According to a legend, giants built Karnak. In 1994, in Turkey, a shepherd discovered the ruins of Göbekli Tepe. Tests indicate an age of over 12,000 years, 7 millennia older than the buildings in Mesopotamia. Here are huge stones in circular shapes, massive columns almost 6 meters tall, and sculptures depicting animals, wild boars, armadillos, and geese that do not live in the area. In 13 years of research, not even one tool for cutting or sculpting the stones has been found. People from the Stone Age created an underground tunnel network that crossed all of Europe, from Scotland to Turkey, according to German archaeologist Heinrich Kusch. He claims in a book that he has found evidence of these underground tunnels in hundreds of Neolithic settlements throughout the continent. Only in Bavaria, Germany, I have found 700 meters of these underground tunnels, and in Styria, Austria, I discovered 350 meters. There were thousands of tunnels in Europe, from the north in Scotland to the Mediterranean Sea, the archaeologist stated. Most of the tunnels have a diameter of no more than 70 centimeters, enough for one person. The tunnels are interspersed with corners, wider spaces, or storage rooms. Not all tunnels are connected to each other, but taken together they form a massive underground network, claimed Heinrich Kusch. At 800 kilometers south of Cairo, in the Nubian desert of Egypt, at Nabta Playa, there is one of the oldest astronomical observatories in the world. The site was discovered in 1974 by archaeologist Fred Wendorf. Research indicates that the astronomical observatory is 7 millennia old, 1,000 years older than Stonehenge. In southern Armenia, in the province of Syunik, about 225 kilometers southeast of the capital Yerevan, there is the city of Sitchin. Next to it there is a vast plateau with many stones weighing more than 50 tons and stretching over a half-kilometer. Here is Karahanj, the Armenian Stonehenge, which is approximately 7,500 years old. The arrangement of the 203 basalt stones corresponds to the Cygnus or Swan constellation. Also, here are 10 millennia-old petroglyphs depicting strange creatures. It has been proven that Stonehenge, the pyramids in Egypt and America, along with other megalithic structures, were built based on planetary alignments. In the 2006 book The Orion Zone, archaeoastronomer Gary David claims that the geographical location of the Hopi tribe ruins in the southwest United States accurately reflects the structure of certain constellations. The Orion belt is directed towards the brightest star, Sirius. The Hopi structures are directed towards Chaco Canyon, and the Orion belt is reflected in the Mayan complexes along the Dead Road in Mexico City, which points to the largest pyramid in the world, Cholula, and in the pyramids of Giza, which points to the city of Heliopolis. In the northwest of New Mexico, there is a large concentration of ancient ruins, an area today known as Chaco Canyon. Built between 900 and 1150 AD, the 15 complexes consist of 4-level structures and hundreds of rooms. It has been discovered that their residents had advanced astronomical knowledge. At Fajada Butte, located at the canyon entrance, 3 giant rock pieces are positioned next to 2 spiral petroglyphs engraved on the back side of the rock. During the solstices and equinoxes, these rocks capture the sun's light in such a way that beams of light shine in different areas of the petroglyphs. Sirius B, which was discovered in 1960, completes a full rotation around Sirius A in 50.09 years. The Dogons of Mali have known about it for nearly 2 millennia, and they know that its full rotation is about 50 years. They also say that Sirius B is small and heavy. It wasn't until the 1960s and 1970s that American telescopes provided evidence that Sirius B is one of the heaviest celestial bodies known. A cubic centimeter of its matter would weigh 50 tons. The Sumerians knew about the existence of Sirius A 4 millennia ago, which they called Ninurta. For the ancient Egyptians, this star represented the goddess Isis. Archaeological sites around the world are not located randomly, but are connected through the world grid, a geometric pattern of energy that crosses the globe. In the Iranian province of Bayistan was found a bas-relief depicting King Darius greeting Ahura Mazda, the supreme god of the Persians. He is flying above the others in a winged box, rays bursting out from under it, and in his left hand he holds an unmistakable pilot's handle. In fact, throughout Mesopotamia have been found tablets and engravings depicting stars surrounded by rays, around which planets of varying sizes gravitate. Plus representations of various characters who wore stars on their heads or beings flying in winged globes. In Kunming, in the Chinese province of Yunnan, several stone pyramids emerged from the bottom of a lake near the city after an earthquake. These pyramids were carved with strange cylindrical spindle-shaped machines that were oriented towards the sky. In Russia was discovered a bas-relief that depicts an object similar to a spaceship, consisting of 10 spheres attached to each other and placed on a rectangular frame supported by 2 massive pillars. Above these, several smaller spheres are placed in a symmetrical manner. At the beginning of the last century, tomb robbers searching along the Magdalena River discovered an 1,500-years-old cemetery belonging to the pre-Columbian Tolima civilization. Among the funerary objects found, a dozen represent airplanes. In 1997, German aviation experts Algund Einbohm and Peter Belting built a copy of an aircraft called the Golden Insect by archaeologists, fitted with a landing gear and engine. The insect flew without problems. In 1891, in a tomb from 200 BC from Zecharia in Egypt, French archaeologists found a small sycamore wood plane. The tomb belonged to Padi Ayman, who lived in the 3rd century BC. Although Egyptologists consider it just a bird, not everyone has accepted this version. In 2006, aeronautical and aerodynamic expert Simon Sanderson built a 5 times larger scale model of the same plane. To the surprise of many, the plane flew, thus demonstrating that the bird from Zecharia is a representation of a glider. Also in Egypt, the walls of a temple in Abydos depict representations of a helicopter, an airplane, and a submarine. Many paintings from the Middle Ages depict unidentified flying objects, especially in relation to religion. One shows Jesus and God near a strange object that strikingly resembles the Sputnik satellite. In a 1350 painting from Kosovo, UFOs are shown being operated by people witnessing Jesus' crucifixion. Crivelli's 1486 painting Annunciation depicts a UFO emitting a beam towards the head of the Virgin Mary. Number 1 of printed publication Super Magazine claimed that in 1991, a team of English and Israeli archaeologists discovered an ancient manuscript in Jerusalem containing 30,000 words. This manuscript, which was restored after 2 years, mentions chariots of fire descending from heaven in Nazareth on the day of Jesus' crucifixion. Science remains unable to provide answers regarding these anomalies, ignoring the fact that beings considered now extraterrestrial have been here since ancient times. Their traces are everywhere, in front of our eyes, indicating a different history of humanity, different from what is taught in schools. Our ancestors recorded parts of it orally, represented it graphically in paintings, sculptures or cave drawings, and in writing, in books, papyri, clay tablets, on temple walls or on stone steles. To find out our true history, we need to learn to listen to what our ancestors have been trying to tell us for tens of thousands of years. Let's stop considering as fabrications what differs from what we know and try to find the core of these so-called legends. And to find the hidden history of the world, we need to find out who the gods are, what they are, where they come from and what